Welcome to my channel. Let's talk about discussion section. So if you are writing a manuscript or if you are writing your thesis or master's or PhD, probably these tips may be helpful for you since I finished my master thesis and I'm working on my PhD right now. But with the I'm working on my manuscripts and things like that really taught me something that I like to share with you. So if you really want to hear, you can just stay here and watch the whole video. First, I need to explain why you really need to write a discussion in a thesis or in a research paper or anywhere. So what is the importance of writing it? So basically you have a discussion section to figure it out, to explain or interpret your data, or if you have any figures, if you have any images or anything like that in your result section, you need to explain and give explicit idea why they are related to each other and why they are related to your research topic, and elaborate how they actually build a story or build a hypothesis you actually work on. So that's the main reason to write a discussion. So, and I think it's kind of you can say it's a important section of your thesis that you really need to pay the attention and take time to do that. So that's not really can do within one day or two. Like, it's really a process because it takes time longer than you ever think, because even you have all the data you have, it takes time to really build a story, and you need to do the good literature survey and see how they are interconnected to each other and what those data really mean. So it's take really good time, unless it's really focused on one thing, like you just finding one solution and you know what's going to happen at the end, so that will be easier. So now you know, okay, this is what's going to happen and now I got what I really want. And then you need to explain what kind of pitfall you had, like what kind of disadvantages or pros and cons of the techniques I used, and whether it's really reliable or repeatable or things like that. You have to address those kind of issues. But in the case of finding a system or a pathway or finding a molecule or a protein, things like that kind of research, so it's like ongoing research and you're doing part of it, and there's still a mystery that you need to solve. So that you need to explain, like which part you really address right now and how you're going to connect that in future. So like you need to explain like what kind of experiment you're hoping to do in future to explain the results or data that not really explained over here, or if there are missing points that you really want to address in future. So again, that's a good time that explain it in your discussion section. So basically that's it, but I need to tell you how you need to write it and those tips that I learned when it's actually going right. So first thing is, when you write the discussion, make sure to separate them into paragraphs and make sure to address one issue at a time. It's like otherwise it's really complicated to follow to anybody who's going to read your research thesis or a presentation, the paper. So it's better to focus on one major point in one paragraph and explicitly explain that, and that'll be much easier. If you think you just need to add one or two, still it'd be fine, but without much clatter. If you can explain it, that'll be much easier. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is somebody has to read it and somebody has to understand what you really did, and so it's better to be less clutter and easy to follow. So that's something I learned, and just focus on one main point and build your paragraphs over that. And once you read the whole discussion, there should be a story, like they should be connected to each other, those paragraphs should be connected, and those discussion, the idea you're talking about should be connected back to your introduction and connected back to your data or the results you have. So that's how you really need to write it. I mean, there's no specific pages or number of pages or like number of paragraphs you need to write, but it's really depend on which kind of research you're doing, or what kind of data you have and how you really want to explain it. So there's no limitation, but when you really publishing something, when it's come to journal, there should be a limitation, and there's a limitation really. So that's you need to remember, and in its dissertation or your thesis, it's fine, you can just elaborately explain what's going on. And if you have any preliminary data that you think really important to explain the data you have right now, so you can really add them into supplementary figures if you want, and if you don't have any space in the result section, and explain those supporting data in discussion, you can do that too. So again, it's not a mandatory thing. Like if you have any and you think that we something you need to talk about, then it's better to do that in discussion section. And another thing is, if you are thinking what kind of pros and cons and what kind of things you can really do to improve what you already did, or something you're thinking that's missing that you really need to address, again, that's discussion is the best place to address those kind of issues. And it doesn't make your research is not really completed, or it's not really finished project. It means you really have a broad idea about what you are doing, and you have kind of idea there's things that you can actually improve, and you are hoping to do it in a future study. So I think that's a really good thing, and you really need to address. So do not ever think that something should not write in your discussion, like you feel like it's something lacking in your research and I should not address that right now. It's not like that. So it's better to address, because when you actually going to publish that, reviewers eventually will going to give your review, and they will actually are going to ask those questions. So it's better you are already address them. So and yeah, that's how it's goes. So yeah, and I prefer when it's come to discussion section, and when I read the article, so journal article or things like that, if it is really simple and really direct forward, then it will be much easier to follow the story. So without much clatter or any descriptive words or anything like that, if you can directly come to the point and explain your data, that will be much easier to the whoever they're going to read your thesis or the article or anything. What I mean is, if you are using according to, like, at least eventually, like those kind of words that really doesn't going to give you any value to your discussion, but you are using them just because to fill the gaps, or like just because to fill the space, that's you can just skip those words, and it doesn't really matter even you write that word or not, because finally you have the idea that you want to tell. So that's the most important thing. Yeah, so it's better if you can make it simple and direct forward. I hope you have a good weekend, and see you in the next video.